Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Okay, so in today's video I'm going to be talking about financial predatoriness. I sort of wrote a script, but sort of not. It's more like just bullet points from the script that I did write, which ended up being way too long. It's like 50 minutes long, and I'm fucking sick of doing long videos. As I said before, I hate doing long videos, believe it or not. So I hate recording them, and I hate inflicting them on my subscribers. So this is sort of going to be unscripted, but sort of scripted, but more like just bullet points. So, you know, forgive the quality or whatever, but I think the idea behind it is decent, so I thought it's worth making a video about. And I wanted to talk today about how being financially predatory is totally morally justifiable. You have to ask yourself, like, why should you be enslaved, you know, just because all the other cowardly sheeple are choosing to be willfully ignorant? You know what I mean? Like, you can't overthrow the government yourself. So by them being cowards, they are assisting in your enslavement. So you therefore need to amass wealth, because when you live in a slavery system like America today, you have to have a lot of money to have freedom, right? It's like Chomsky said, like, he wasn't agreeing with it, but he was saying this is unfortunately reality right now, which is that you get as much freedom as you can afford. That's what Chomsky said. He said you get as much freedom as you can afford, and that is really, really true. That is so, so true. And so you need to amass as much wealth as possible just to be even moderately free in this tyrannical country because of all the sheeple allowing all this slavery. You see, so, you know, they are the ones, the sheeple, they're the ones refusing to save in gold and silver. They're the ones refusing to arm themselves or push back against the government, you know, march on Washington, D.C., well-armed, you know, with a gun on their hip and a backpack full of bullets, and demand that the government get rid of debt-based fiat currency and shrink the budget by 99%. You know, they're the ones refusing to do all that stuff. You know, refusing to demand the end of welfare, etc., refusing to demand that we go back on a gold standard or a Bitcoin standard or something. They're the ones refusing to do that. And so they are enslaving us, and so we are therefore completely justified in being financially predatory toward those sheeple. It's up to the sheeple, or rather the people. It's up to the people in general to hold the government accountable. But if most people are sheeple and are not holding the government accountable or utterly refusing to do so, then, you know, they're fair game, you know? If, like, you know, we're financially predatory the way George Soros was when he broke the Bank of England, being a bond vigilante or whatever, then, like, if the government has to, like, recapitalize the banks or something because of legal financial stuff that, you know, we're doing to make money, and we like break the Bank of, you know, America or whatever, or some other bank from another country, if we do that, if we destroy another country, then, like, that's not our fault, because they should have had principles, you know, like what's going to happen when you do that, right? Like, the government is not going to go broke. It's just going to tax the people more or print the money and then thereby raise inflation. So then the sheeple do have to pay for what you did to the government, and they deserve it, because they're the ones allowing the government to get away with doing that to them. And they're the ones refusing to deal with the government in the first place, therefore giving you the moral justification to be financially predatory toward the government or toward the sheeple in general. You know, like in the stock market or whatever, you know. A collection of, you know, you could pool your money in a commune, right? And then have the smartest guy in the commune do the investing and do the George Soros thing with it. Maybe it's not all his money, but, like, maybe it's a commune of, like, 30,000 people or something, and they're all contributing a significant amount of money every month to this fund that the smartest guy in the commune, who's an expert trader, uses to make a huge amount of money, right? And then he really harms everybody else outside and the government, and makes the commune much, much richer by doing this, right? Like, it's the sheeples' fault, you know? They should have been saving in gold and silver so they'd be immune to inflation. You know, it's a totally moral thing to do that. You know what I mean? The sheeple deserve their taxes going up, or the hidden tax of inflation going up. Because if they had saved in gold or overthrown the government, then their taxes or inflation would not be going up. They deserve their poverty and slavery because of their lack of principle and because of their lack of courage. You know, they're too cowardly to use physical force against the government to force it to go back to being sane and free and small, etc. And government always has weaknesses. Like, in order to grow its power, everything is yin and yang, right? So when you increase your strength in certain ways, you are typically decreasing your strength in other ways, right? Like eating a ton of calories or taking like steroids, right? Like they make you stronger, but they make your bones weaker, right? Or like eating a bunch of calories, like 6,000 calories a day or whatever, to lift a ton of weights, right? Like that's more stress on your kidneys. You can have like kidney or liver failure because of that, right? Especially over a period of years. Like especially if you don't have great genetics, like maybe you would have lived to be 60, but now you're going to die when you're 40 or something, or 35, because you've been eating way more calories than is normal. Like every strength has a consequent weakness that goes along with it. So the government, by making itself bigger and stronger, has had to do things which make it weaker also, like suppress the price of gold and silver, thus making it more vulnerable to, the price of gold and silver going up and getting out of control, and then that crashing the dollar and the government being destroyed. You know what I mean? Like every strength that the government increases in itself is also a weakness. You know what I mean? So we are morally obligated to take advantage of every weakness that government has. I also want to say it's morally justifiable to take advantage of sheeple who choose to be willfully ignorant, but it is not morally justifiable to lie to sheeple, because the point is it's morally justifiable to take advantage of sheeple who choose to be willfully ignorant, but the sheeple who are, or the people who are truly ignorant, they're not turning away from the truth, they just happen to be ignorant. The people who are ignorant, you're not really morally justified in preying on. But the people who choose to be ignorant, you are morally justified in preying on. And so it's not morally justified to lie to the sheeple. That's the difference between what I'm talking about and what the elites do. The elites lie their asses off to the people and then take advantage of the people in all kinds of ways. I'm saying be totally upfront about what you're doing. Say, hey, join me, join a commune, save gold, do what I'm doing, and then you won't be preyed on. But if you're not going to do that, then screw you, you're the enemy, you're helping the government, and I will prey on you. And I'm going to be totally upfront about that fact. In my predatory trading on Forex or Wall Street or the COMEX or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not Darwinianism to just prey on people for no reason, because that's another thing. This is totally different than the Darwinianism or so-called Darwinianism of the elites, because they just prey on people for no reason, because they think they're better than everybody, even though they're not, right? But those people who make the most money in society are breeding the very least. I mean, Joss Whedon, one kid. Alt MGTOW, one kid. Vladimir Nabokov, one kid. This is a really, really common thing for these top guys to have a ton of sex with a ton of women, but have only like one or two kids. It's ridiculous. So it's not Darwinianism when they're the very reason that they should be allowed to have more sex with more women or should be allowed to make more money is so that they can have more kids and improve the gene pool. But they're not doing that. So there's no excuse for what they're doing. Lying to people and making a ton of money by doing so. There's no evolutionary excuse for what these top men, the elites, are doing. But, if we do it and we're open and upfront about what we're doing and why we're doing it, because the sheeple deserve it for being willfully ignorant, for not saving in gold, for not opposing the government, etc., this is totally moral. And we will have a lot of kids by doing this, right? And therefore it is morally justifiable and evolutionarily justifiable, to be financially predatory. So this may seem, what I'm advocating here may seem like I'm joining the dark side or something, as that guy Dead Kitten said. He said something like, glad to see you've joined the dark side, it's fun over here. And I'm like, what the hell? No, I haven't. I'm no different than I was before. Yeah, my views have changed slightly in terms of, I realize MGTOW is not sustainable. It makes no sense because of the fact that the female span of beauty is 1/3 to 1/2 as long as the male span of libido, and women have lower sex drives, so therefore, even just a serially monogamous society is totally unsustainable, turns a huge percentage of men, 50 to 67% of men, into incels, which we will see as all the married men start to die off over the next few decades. But promiscuity is even more unsustainable, so yeah, my views in terms of that kind of thing have changed, but that's not joining the dark side. So I have not joined the dark side at all. I'm still moral. I'm still, compassionally oriented and virtue and freedom oriented. So this is not me. You can't view this in what I'm saying in this video as in a shallow way and think that this is me advocating being the same way as the elites are. No, it's completely different, because I'm saying be open about what you're doing and why you're doing it. The elites lie. I'm saying don't lie. And I'm saying do it toward people who deserve it, not toward people who don't deserve it. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, maybe that by, taking advantage of people in the stock market, trading predatorily or whatever, making money in COMEX or Forex or whatever, breaking, one of the government's banks or central banks or whatever, doing that kind of stuff is, maybe it does have a little bit of collateral damage of non-sheeple, but not much. not the true non-sheeple who are saving in precious metals and living in a commune. Those people are going to be little or not at all affected by what you're doing. So really, this is totally moral. And it really does depend on the intention. It's like what Buddha said. I'm not saying it's true because Buddha said it. I'm saying like Buddha is wise because he said something that is true, which is that, much of what he said is true, but what he's recorded is being said. But anyway, Buddha said that karma is intention. This is really true. You can do the same action. One person could do one action, second person could do the exact same action, but if one person's intention in doing it is greedy, vicious, nihilistic, sadistic, etc., then it's an immoral act. The other person could be doing the exact same action out of moral reasons, right? So if you're financially predatory to try to wake the sheeple up and strengthen your own virtuous community in order to save the world eventually, then you're doing a virtuous act, especially if you're just preying on people who deserve it for the most part, right? But if you are, being financially predatory because you're just a nihilistic, selfish, hedonistic scumbag, then yeah, you have no moral justification for what you're doing. You know what I mean? So, this is how it is. It just depends on your intention for the most part and who you're acting on. You know what I mean? Whether the people who you're acting on, who you're financially robbing legally, whether you're not robbing them illegally, you're robbing them legally. Like what Lloyd Blankfein and Jamie Dimon did up to 2008. With the mortgages and derivatives and all that shit. You know what I mean? The mortgage-backed securities or whatever they're called. So by doing this, we can actually force the sheeple to wake up and get angry, and then oppose the government. So we're actually doing a virtuous act by being this way. Now, some people might say that I'm being cynical, but I'm actually not. It's not cynicism when people really are willfully ignorant, hedonistic, sexually degenerate, cowardly, dishonest, lazy, vicious, etc. When people are bad, then cynicism is not cynicism. It's realism. It's being realistic. Now, if you're just being a cynic and thinking this way of people so you'd have an excuse to be predatory in a good society like, 1950s America or earlier, especially, in the 1800s, if you were this kind of a person back when it's virtuous, whether that's in the past or in the future, if you're being a cynical asshole whenever most people are virtuous, then yeah, you're just a cynic, you're a scumbag. But if you're highly cynical when people are mostly scumbags, then, or at the very least, even the so-called good people, the so-called nice people, are themselves quite unprincipled. They won't buy gold or silver because they're worried about it going up or down. Rather than doing the right thing and buying it because it's the right thing to do, but also having the wisdom to realize that long term it is the profitable thing to do. Being cynical in a bad country where most people are bad, even so-called good people, yeah, that's not cynicism, that's being realistic. And there's no reason you should be harmed because they're being sheeple on purpose. Sheeple could protect themselves from high rent by forming communes. Sheeple could protect themselves from inflation by saving in gold. And so if sheeple don't do these things, they deserve to be taken advantage of. Make them pay a price for their willful ignorance, and their hedonism, and their cowardice, and their profligacy. It's actually morally obligatory for us to make them pay a price for their willful ignorance, because only when they are made to pay a price for their ignorance and hedonism will they finally realize that being willfully ignorant is morally wrong. Only then will they start to red pill themselves and become braver and more principled. Only then will the country become a better place. If the government is morally justified in taxing people, like most sheeple believe it is, well then we the red-pilled people are even more justified in legally robbing the sheeple. Their poverty is on their own hands, much like how the blood of Elliot and Alec and Patrick and Brenton's victims is on the hands of the sheeple, the promiscuous sheeple, not on the hands of those brave guys who pulled the trigger, or in Alec's case, pressed the gas pedal. The rich don't typically oppose the government very vocally. I never hear them advocate for violent overthrow of the U.S. government, and thus it is not me giving a pass to rich people to say the stuff that I'm saying in this video. This is not me taking their side or anything. Most of them, by failing to advocate for overthrow of the government, and by failing to join together and use their collective massive financial wealth to lobby the government to go back on sound money, or to shrink, or to get us off a debt-based fiat currency or whatever, by them refusing to use their power for good, they deserve to be exsanguinated. So this is not me taking the side of the elites against the people. This is me taking the side of people like Patrick Dowell against both the sheeple and the elites, both of whom are evil. The elites are way worse, but the sheeple are bad too. Just because even if for no other reason, they're just sitting back and allowing the elites to take advantage of them, and therefore they're helping the elites by paying taxes and stuff. If the country is highly moral and we have no government, or if the average person is waging a revolutionary war against the government, then there's no justification for being financially predatory. But if the people are hedonistic, shallow, willfully ignorant, vicious, selfish, etc., then they deserve to be legally robbed. The sheeple consensually enter the trading realm, and so ripping their face off in that realm is far more moral than forcing people to pay taxes at the barrel of a gun. And the sheeple, by being cowardly and hedonistic and wasteful and selfish and nihilistic, are giving you permission to steal from them. Legally steal, that is. Promiscuity is predatory as well, and the logic here seems to be similar, if not identical, to the logic the MGTOW men use in excusing their promiscuity. The argument being that, number one, they have no choice, number two, the other people are being willfully ignorant, number three, they're waging war on the system by going MGTOW, etc. But promiscuity doesn't actually help anyone. It just destroys women and turns other men into incels, etc. There's no lasting value gained by it. But being financially predatory allows you to turn that wealth into silver or gold, and thereby harm the government by making gold and silver more scarce. And also, you are making yourself more prosperous because gold and silver go up in value, unlike the dollar, which goes down in value over time. But also, you're making it so that you have more money to take care of your loved ones when the crash happens. And thus, being financially predatory can be very useful and helpful to people, other than yourself. You know, it allows you to have enough money to then, when your gold and silver goes way, way up in a massive crash, a shit hits the fan scenario, or the end of the world as we know it scenario, then you'll have the money to take care of your parents, your siblings' spouses and kids, your cousins' spouses and kids, your friends, etc. You'll be able to all help them a little bit. At least they could all live with you together in your apartment or your house or whatever, and then you'd, at the very least, you'd have enough money to buy food in bulk and feed them all. Even if you can't, buy them new clothes and help them live nicely, at the very least you could help keep them alive. All the information about female nature is already out there in other MGTOW videos and in previous books by Esther V. Lahr and other people. And so a guy who's being promiscuous is not learning any more about female nature by being promiscuous. And so he's not actually doing any good by continuing to be promiscuous. It doesn't benefit anyone for him to continue to be promiscuous, even if he does make MGTOW videos exposing female nature, because there's already tons of videos out there exposing female nature. So he's not really doing anything novel. He's not doing anything new to benefit anyone. He's not putting any new information out there. So his promiscuity does not help anyone, But financial predatoriness does help other people, or it allows you to amass wealth so that you can eventually help other people. This means that financial predatoriness can be moral, while promiscuity cannot be moral. You are not justified in being promiscuous, but you are justified in stealing virginal daughters away from their parents and having those daughters live in a commune with you, her husband, so that she rarely sees her relatives anymore. Her parents deserve that by being unprincipled, by being hedonistic, cowardly, by paying taxes, etc. But they don't deserve you sleeping with their daughter and ruining her for no reason and not doing any good for the world by doing so. You see, you are justified in stealing these men's daughters away from them and bringing the daughter into the commune to live with you, to live with you and all the other guys and their wives in the commune, but you're not justified in being promiscuous. By being financially predatory serves two purposes. It makes you stronger, and it makes the sheeple angry so that they finally wake up and get their balls back and oppose government's very existence. Sheeple have hobbled themselves, and so it's right to be financially predatory and pick off the weak ones who are weak by their own lack of virtue. It's like a cheetah picking off the slowest zebra in the herd, except in this case you're preying on people who actually deserve it, not people who happen to be born weak. In other words, you're preying on people who are morally weak, not intellectually or financially weak. Prey on the Christians, too. By trusting in man's money, that is fiat currency, they're acting like godless heathens. They're acting like pagans, these so-called Christians. And so by trusting in man instead of trusting in God, they deserve to be legally stolen from as much as possible. Because if they had trusted in God, and therefore used God's money, they would not have been robbed by the infinite tax of inflation, which does infinitely tax your savings. It taxes the same dollars over and over and over again until they're worth nothing. Christians, by saving in dollars, by not forming their own communities that keep out the cops, etc., are on the side of the bad guys, on the side of the Satanists, on the side of the baby-raping elites. And as long as they're on the side of the bad guys, we need to prey off of them like they deserve. We need to prey off of the Christians, as long as they're on the bad guys' side. Christians are doubly bad because they're hypocrites. They should know better. The sheeple are the enemy, and so we need to attack them and prey off of them as if they are the enemy, because they are. You're either fighting on the side of good or you're on the side of evil by doing nothing to oppose evil and by paying taxes. Either you're an ally or you're an enemy. And if you're the enemy, we good people who oppose tyranny have zero obligation to show you any mercy at all. Similar to how men who wife swap or engage in threesomes or who cheat on their wives are fair game when it comes to sleeping with married women. In a virtuous society, it is morally unjustifiable to sleep with married women. But even in a virtuous society, it is morally justifiable to sleep with married women who are married to men who cheat on them or who are sexual degenerates. He lost his right to his wife being faithful by cheating on her or by being a sexual degenerate. You have every right to steal his wife away from him as punishment for him being a literal cuck if he lets other men fuck his wife. She has the excuse of being amoral and thus not knowing right from wrong. But men have no such excuse, and therefore such sexually degenerate men deserve to have their wives stolen from them, and no blame attaches to the act of stealing that woman away from her husband because her husband was not acting like a husband. He was acting more like a non-hetero, like Milo Yiannopoulos. As long as you're not just using her for sex and you're willing to marry her and be a good husband to her, then you're justified in stealing her away from him. Although you'd be an idiot to marry such a woman. Guys with self-respect only marry virgins, unless they're just idiots who don't realize the importance of virginity in a woman. And it is important, otherwise it would not have been, valued throughout all of society, especially back in society when, men back in the past, there was very little room for error. And so society was built on what made society functional. And that's why they had women marry as virgins, unless, of course, her husband died. Then she was allowed to remarry. Women had to marry as virgins, or else they had no chance of getting a husband unless she was a widow. And that's because everybody understood the importance of virginity, because they understood the importance of pair bonding, and they understood the importance of pair bonding to females being faithful, right? So, this is the way it is. But I suppose in a society like today's, if the only woman you can get is like the wife of a guy who does wife swapping or threesomes or something like that. If you could only get a girl like that, that's better than not getting a girl, because if you're a principled, virtuous person who's courageous, then you're at least, enabling yourself to pass on your genes by marrying rather than being an incel. So if it's between being an incel and marrying a woman who's the wife of a degenerate guy, then yeah, you're totally justified in stealing her away from him. Even retards, another thing, keep going, another sort of bullet point here. Even retards can invest in silver. Even the poor can invest in silver, and thus they have no excuse for not investing in silver the way the dumb people have an excuse for not investing in crypto. Because to keep your crypto safe, you really should know how to code and all that kind of stuff, right? So if you don't know how to code, if you don't know how to keep your computer super safe, crypto's, you're really justified in staying away from crypto if you're not a coder, in my opinion. But even an idiot can invest in silver, and it's completely safe to do so, completely easy. Just the dumbest idiot with an 80 or 85 IQ could easily invest in silver, assuming he has the money to do so. And so, which it really only takes, just a few dollars. I mean, like, what's a silver dime? Like, I don't know, like less than $1, I think, or maybe around $1, in terms of like, no, yeah, it's got to be less than $1. Like, a silver dime is hardly anything. And a silver quarter, I think, is hardly anything as well. Like, I don't know, $3, $4, maybe $5 at the most. Like, it really is the case that, like, even if you only have like $5 or $10 extra at the end of the month with which to save, you could be buying silver. You could be buying 1 or 2 silver dimes or a silver quarter. That's it. Even idiots, even poor idiots can save in silver. So there's no excuse for not saving in silver. Like there is an excuse for dumb people not investing in crypto. Everyone can fight the system by buying silver. And so if people are not doing it, then that is their fault, especially in the age of information. Like I recently heard Pastor Dowell say, and I had made these voice recorder notes that I turned into script that I eventually turned into this bullet point thing. I had like realized this before, so I'm not getting this from Pastor Dowell, but he says the same thing as I was already thinking before I even saw that video of his, but I really like the way he said it. He said, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. And that is a very good way of saying it, because that is so, so true. And that is why you are morally justified in preying on willfully ignorant sheeple. Another little final note here. Instead of some Illuminati symbolism, I'll talk about something about silver. I recently learned in a video, this is something I don't think I knew before, or if I had, I'd totally forgotten it, which is that silver shot is actually a really bad investment. See, I had seen it before on this may seem to contradict what I said before, but what I said before is generally true, but an exception to that is one mistake a beginner in silver can make, which I've almost made before, is that buying silver shot. Little, kind of like little balls of silver, right? They're, I think, 100% silver or whatever, but like, they're not labeled as being, 0.999 pure or whatever, and they're not printed by government. They're just little round spheres of silver, tiny little round spheres, like BBs, like ball bearings or whatever, little ball bearings. And so this is actually a bad investment, because if you try and resell it, you're only going to get like 80% of spot, because you're gonna have to sell it to a refiner, and the refiner can't trust that it's pure silver because it's not labeled. So he's going to have to refine it anyway. So he's only going to give you 80% of spot. So buying silver shot is a bad idea, right? Unless you're going to be someone who's going to be creating his own bars or coins with the silver, then it's good to buy, right? But because you're going to be reselling it or giving it as gifts, the bars or coins that you make yourself, you're going to be giving them as gifts or selling them, with a markup or whatever, so you're getting your money back. But whatever, like buying silver shot for just saving it as silver shot to later resell is a bad idea. That's a bad investment. You should instead be buying generic 1-ounce rounds or government 1-ounce coins like Maple Leafs, Silver Eagles, Libertads. Or you should be buying junk silver. That is U.S. coinage from the year 1964 or earlier, which is 90% silver. And it's actually like buying dimes like that, Roosevelt or Mercury dimes. If you do that, that's actually way cheaper than buying modern fractional rounds. Or you should be buying in, 100-ounce bars. So, rounds, 1-ounce rounds, 1-ounce coins, or junk silver, or 100-ounce bars, which are a little bit cheaper than rounds. Maybe even significantly cheaper. Not so much today necessarily, but even today, if you can find a 100-ounce bar, like Scottsdale Mint is still selling 100-ounce bars, or they were not that long ago, maybe a week ago, less than a week ago, maybe 4 days ago or something. But anyway, like those are the kinds of silver that you should be buying. It's really easy, really cheap. Yeah, I guess that's about all I had to say in this video. This has been Redshift. Hit the thumbs up button if you like this video. Hit the thumbs down button if you hated it. Peace, trucks.